Happy to be here today. I really am. The best place in the world to be if you are celebrating is within the community of faith with people of faith. And I am celebrating today because as of last Wednesday in America, all love is equal. I was down in West Hollywood, and when the announcements were made and there was a rally with 10,000 people and all of the great people were there, the mayor of Los Angeles and the senator was there, and all these great people that brought this thing about, and we were celebrating together. You may have seen me on TV because they were cameras everywhere, thousands and thousands of people, and I don't remember a time where there was such jubilation around. And I first thought about that and said, I can't wait to get to church and be around people. So I came over here yesterday for the great celebration of the croning ceremony of our good Carrie, and everybody came up and said, okay, when is the wedding? We're ready to do a wedding. And so who knows? That may happen sooner than you think. I did ask Bob to marry me last night, even though I didn't get on my knee because I have a bum knee. And after 32 years, it was about time. And he incidentally said yes. Good. Part of the celebration in West Hollywood, and of course you've seen it on the news and lots of things happened, was remembering how we got to this place and how we got to this point. And I remember that among Unitarian Universalism, the affirmation of human rights when it comes to LGBT people and others went way back in our history. And we were one of the first congregations and association of congregations to encourage people in the ministry who were lesbian and gay and now transgender also and bisexual. And one of those early people was Mark DeWolf, who was a friend of mine and one of the first Unitarian ministers I met back when I was getting ready to go to seminary in 1984. He was a terrific guy and very talented, and his life was cut short when he died of AIDS in 1988. And so he's part of our forebears' history, and especially among the LGBT community and the UUs. Mark wrote a song which is in our hymnal, and I'd like to read that for the opening words today. It's on page 295, and it talks about the journey. And it says, sing out praises for the journey. Pilgrims, we who carry on. Searchers in the soul's deep yearnings, like our forebears in their time. We seek out the Spirit's wholeness in the endless human quest. Look inside, your soul's the kindling of the hearth fire's pilgrims new. Find the Spirit, always restless, find it in each mind and heart. Touch and hold the ancient yearning, kindling for a new-found truth. Stand we now upon the threshold, facing futures yet unknown. Hearth behind us, wayside hostel built by those who knew wild roads. Guard we ere their sacred embers, carried in our minds and hearts. On this day, we guard the sacred embers of those who came before us, making the way for us. And now we celebrate and we are happy, and it is good as we look to build a new land, and that is the...
Anybody else? Aiden, come on, Aiden. Oh, you've got a washcloth to wipe your face off. I wish I had that. I've already gone through my first packet of paper towel. Well, this morning, most of you know we're going to have what's called a flower communion. That's why all of these flowers are here. Does anybody know where the whole idea of the flower communion in the Unitarian Church came from? Dorothy says she forgot. You've been told it before, though, right? Yeah. Well, it came from a place pretty far away from us, a country in Eastern Europe. It's right here. It's called, well, it used to be called Czechoslovakia. It's now called the Czech Republic. And it originated in the capital city of the Czech Republic, which is Prague. And it was originated by a Unitarian minister. And this is him. And he did this. He originated the flower communion in 1923. His name is Norbert Čapek. And I'm going to read you a short story about him and how the whole flower communion started. Okay? Okay. In the city of Prague, in the land of Czechoslovakia, in the year 1923, there was a church. But the building did not look much like a church. It had no bells, no spires, no stained glass windows. It had no organ to make beautiful music. It didn't even have a piano. Wow. It had no carvings of wood or statues of stone. It had no candles or chalices. It had no flowers. The church did have some things, but that was pretty meager. It had 4 walls, a ceiling, and a floor. It had a door and just a few windows. And it had some wooden chairs. But that was all. It was pretty plain and simple. Except the church also had people who came to it every Sunday. It had a minister, and his name was Norbert Čapek. It's spelled C-A-P-E-K, but it's pronounced Čapek. He had been the minister at the plain and simple church for 2 years. Every Sunday, Minister Čapek went to church and he spoke to the people while they listened, sitting quietly and still in those hard wooden chairs. When he was done speaking, the people talked a little bit among themselves and then they went home. And that was it. No music, no candles, no food, no coffee or tea or snacks. Pfft. Springtime came to the city of Prague, and Norbert Čapek went out for a stroll. The rains had come, the birds were singing, and the flowers were blooming all over the countryside. The world was beautiful. Then an idea came to him, simple and clear, plain as day. The next Sunday, he has asked all the people in his church to bring a flower or a budding branch or even just a twig. Each person was to bring one. What kind, they asked? What color? What size? You make the choice, he said. Each of you choose what you like. And so on the next Sunday, which was the first Sunday of summer, and we're not too far away from the first Sunday of summer, that was last Sunday, the people came with flowers, all different colors and sizes and kinds. There were yellow daisies and red roses. There were white lilies and blue asters, dark-eyed pansies, and light green leaves, pink and purple, orange and gold. There were all those colors and more. Sort of what you see here this morning. Flowers filled all the vases, and the church wasn't so plain and simple anymore. Minister Čapek spoke to the people while they listened, sitting quiet and still in those hard wooden chairs. These flowers are like ourselves, he said. They are different colors and different shapes and different sizes, each needing different kinds of care, but each beautiful, each important, and special in its own way. When he was done speaking, the people talked a little bit among themselves, and then they each chose a flower, a different flower than the one they brought, from the vases before they went home. And that was all, and it was beautiful, plain and simple as the day. And that's how Flower Communion started. Thank you so much for coming up here.
This time of celebration of the good things happening around the country and even around the world, and even amidst the bad things happening, I would like to remember that this is a good place to be. That is, a Unitarian Universalist congregation is a good place to be, because we're always somehow or other trying to seek out the goodness that is possible in the world, and even supporting that, as for instance this week in the gay rights struggle, we remember that Unitarians and Universalists were on the forefront of that struggle for many, many years. One of the things that I particularly appreciate about Unitarian Universalism is the way we try to understand and be respectful of all people's religions and all people's faiths and all people's ways of being in the world. So I have chosen for the reading today an excerpt from a book called Our Chosen Faith by Forrest Church and John Burens. It's a kind of a manual about Unitarian Universalism and the history of it. And Forrest, who only recently passed away, one of the great ministers of the 20th and 21st centuries, has this section in it, which he calls the Cathedral of the World. Imagine awakening one morning from a deep and dreamless sleep to find yourself in the nave of a vast cathedral. Like a newborn child, quite unaware except for moisture, nurture, rhythm, and the profound comforts at the heart of darkness, you open your eyes upon a world hitherto unseen, indeed, that which is unimaginable. It is a world of light and dancing shadow, stone and glass, life and death. Awakening to the call of life itself, you begin your pilgrimage. Before you do, you look around you and you contemplate the mystery and contemplate with awe. The cathedral is as ancient as humankind. Its cornerstone is the first altar, marked with the tincture of blood and stained with tears. Search for a lifetime, which is all you are surely given, and you shall never know its limits. Visit all of its corners, worship at its myriad shrines, nor span its celestial ceiling with your gaze. The builders have worked from time immemorial, destroying and perfecting, tearing down and raising up arches of this cathedral with its buttresses and chapels and organs and theaters, chancels and pulpits, gargoyles, idols, icons. The work begun shall not be finished in the lifetime of the architects who planned it, the patrons who paid for it, the builders who constructed, or the expectant worshipers. Not a moment passes without the dreams of long dead dreamers being outstripped, shattered, and abandoned, giving way to new visions with equally important in reach, yet ephemeral in grasp. Welcome to the Cathedral of the World. Above all else, contemplate the windows of this cathedral. In the Cathedral of the World, there are windows without numbers, some long forgotten, covered with many patinas of dust, and others revered by millions the most sacred of shrines. Each in its own way is beautiful. Some are abstract, others representational, some are dark and meditative, others are bright and dazzling. And each tells a story about the creation of the world, the meaning of history, the purpose of life, the nature of humankind, and the mystery of death. The windows of the cathedral are where the light shines in. And some folks claim the light shines through their window only. Skeptics can make a similar mistake, only to draw the opposite conclusion. And as they behold the bewildering variety of windows and observing the follow of the worshipers, they conclude that there is no light. But the windows are not the light. There is a light beyond, the whole light, which we might call God or truth or the ultimate of all that is. The totality is beyond our perceiving, and this ultimacy is veiled. But we can see the light, it is everywhere, and in this magnificent place, the diverse windows, each refracts the light as an amazingly unique experience. Thus, we visit the cathedral of the world. The last sermon that I will be delivering here until August. I am going on vacation starting tomorrow, in case you're wondering where I am. I am going to Australia for a month, and actually that's not true. But as far as you're concerned, I am in Australia. Because of Bob's health, we're probably not going to be able to do much traveling, certainly, or even partying for that matter, but we are going to try to get our act together and get our lives together and have a good time for the month of July. A year I have been here. Do you imagine that? It's been a year. We've had some very good times together. I like you. I really do. I like being around you. I think y'all are just great people, and there's so many good things. I love your commitment to wanting to build a new land here at this place, a new congregation full of vibrancy and life, and like that cathedral of the world, filled with many, many options for people to come in and feel at home and feel as though they are receiving good things by being here. I love the willingness that you have to collaborate with me in my work as a transition minister to help move us toward that great dream of a new future together. And so we've been, and one other thing I like about you is you all really know how to party. The party yesterday was really neat, and I really appreciate that. I think that, different churches have different signs that they put out on the road, and they try to say something about what the church is like and what we're doing, and maybe we should put the party church out there. The people who party here. A lot of people would come to church if they thought it was going to be as fun as a party. That's true. So we've been talking about all these things this last year, and so today I just want to kind of sum up a little bit of it, but I want to say that again and again, I'm just glad to be here and glad to be part of this very exciting moment in the history of Live Oak Unitarian Universalist Congregation. UUs, I think, are specific in the world today and unique in the world today in that we do have a vision of that cathedral of the world that you may not find in many other congregations. We are a people who invite everyone in, whoever you are, wherever you are on your life's journey, you are welcome to come into this place. We are a people who invite you to choose and to consider the pathway that we're on as a group and individually. And along each part of that pathway, we can choose. And part of that is what you believe. And as a matter of fact, we're not a group of people who really believe things. At least we don't believe the same things. There are people here who believe in a strong image of God in the world, and there are people who say God has nothing to do with anything, that it is the human spirit which leads us on. And you are invited to choose what it is that you believe. But our history, and particularly the history in America, is kind of interesting in that regard. There's a story about that. It's probably apocryphal, but one of our famous forebears was Hosea Ballou, and he was something like the one who kind of organized universalism in America. And once he was asked in a public meeting, what do universalists stand for? And he answered, we don't stand for anything. We are constantly on the move. Yet we do want some good answers to the question, what do we stand for? But there are no clear-cut answers for this, for there are many viewpoints. Since the beginning of my time here at Live Oak, as your interim minister, I've been asked the same question, who are you? And I've been asking you, who are you? And what on earth are you doing? And frankly, it is not an easily answered question, and I run into difficulty every time somebody calls the church and asks for a simple 2 or 3 sentence explanation of exactly what I'm believing in and what I'm doing, even as what Unitarian Universalism is. How do you respond to that when people say, well, what do you all believe? What do you all do down there? You see somebody in a supermarket you haven't seen for years, once a good friend, somehow drifted away, and you explain that you're getting ready for a potluck at a church gathering, and your friend says, a church gathering? And what kind of church is that? Unitarian Universalism? And what is that? Is that the Universal Life Church where you can send $25 and get a certificate of ordination? Or is that like the Unification Church, otherwise known as the Moonies, followers of Sun Myung Moon? And then your friend says, are you in a cult? So pray tell, what is this faith all about? What is Unitarian Universalism? And how would you answer that question? I usually find myself talking about a particular aspect of it rather than the whole thing. For instance, there's the authority issue and how you struggle with determining exactly who or what our authority is. And I'm not sure I've ever found a complete answer for that, which of course is one of the many advantages and frustrations of our Unitarian Universalist way. There are never any clear-cut absolute answers to the questions. And we have decided that we don't even need all those clear-cut absolute answers to survive and to flourish. Many folks who come to churches nowadays are seeking answers, and they want to know the solutions to life's riddles, which we all know, well, there are many solutions. Some people want explanations with detailed proof statements, and they tend to find Unitarianism uninteresting and even unfulfilling because they don't get those clear-cut answers. Many religious pathways offer answers, clear and understandable. And the details are still fuzzy in many cases, but the larger picture, the larger puzzle, namely what is going on, is addressed with great flourish. And I certainly remember that in my fundamentalist faith that I grew up with. And that's very appealing, and it's in fact still appealing to me. I wish I had the answers to a lot of these questions. I wish I had some concrete answers that I could give to people who are asking those questions of me. Well, you're a UU minister, you ought to know these things. You ought to have answers for me. And so we choose a way of being, and we say that ours is a chosen faith, and that means many things. For one thing, it reminds us that most UUs were reared in another faith tradition or in no religious environment at all, and yet we have chosen this faith rather than having inherited it. What I'm saying is that most Unitarian Universalists have thought about their religion. We've considered the question of religion at all, and the question of what kind of religion. And in that sense, we are converts. Can you imagine that? The act of choice is an aspect of Unitarian Universalism that I think is central to who we are. We are people of choice. We are people who choose to believe. And this goes way back in our history, and it manifests itself in so many different ways. We Unitarian and Universalists have often been classified as heretics. And little do they know when they call us that the word heretic is based on a Greek word, a Greek verb, herein, which means to choose. We are heretics, for we have chosen what we want to believe. And a heretic is one who chooses, so I proudly take that up as a banner of affirmation that I am a heretic. Someone who is not choosing not to follow a party line and to go further to freely investigate whatever one needs to live and to grow. And faced with the mystery of life and death, each act of faith for those who consciously choose is a gamble. And we all risk choices as we stand before the unknown. We believe in choice, in the incredible human capacity to choose. One of our basic functions, or our basic theological functions, is the idea of freedom. Freedom for what? Freedom to choose what we want to do, what we want to believe, and what we want to be as human beings. We've always been on the forefront of the pro-choice movement, for instance. And from the very beginning, Unitarians and Universalists were believing that women had the right to choose what happens to their bodies. So it is that we are sometimes called the free choice, free church. In fact, back when the Unitarians and Universalists first merged in 1961, there was a question of what they were going to call the new religious organization. And everybody said, well, let's just put the names together, Unitarian and Universalist. And they said, that is so high. How do you answer the phone? Say, hello, this is the Live Oak Unitarian Universalist congregation. And by that time, the caller has kind of drifted off into another place. One of the suggestions was to call it the Free Church of America. The Free Church of America, that people are free to believe, free to do, free to act. But it didn't make it that way, and we are called, with a rather clumsy name, Unitarian Universalists. And so it is that we are choosers, and we choose how it is that we want to live. And we are in a religious realm when we think about freedom, about responsibility that we take for those choices that we make, about change, about new life. And what better place could there be than to use this faith as a way of living? And I like to say we are using this faith to do our lives for a living. We're doing this for a living. That's how we make our way, is with our chosen faith. I would like to kind of switch gears here a little bit, and Barbara, you can tell the people, the kids, that we're about ready to begin this other part of our service, which is the flower communion. And it is about choice also. When I ask you to bring flowers today, I wanted each of you to choose your own flower, your own blossom. Is Wilson here? Where is it? Wilson, yeah. Blossom and flower, they're the same kind of thing. We had a little discussion about that online, but they are. So each of you got to choose your own blossom or your own flower or your own branch of a weed, for that matter. And you say, this is what I want to bring to this service. So we're still talking about choice. We're still talking about our chosen faith. And now we will enter into the Norbert Chapek story of the first flower communion that happened all those many years ago. And by the way, the word itself makes a few people uncomfortable, and that is the word communion. My own partner, Bob, who was raised from age 0 through high school in Roman Catholic schools, still bristles at the idea of communion. No way am I won't even go to a flower communion, let alone a communion. For him and many others, communion's not a good thing because it was used for centuries as a kind of weapon, dividing the good from the bad. And to this day, in many churches, including the world's largest church organization, you can't have communion unless they let you have it. You are divided between those people and our people. That was the original idea that was perverted. The original idea was from the words common and the word union. Common union. This union is required by the word unity and is the base for the word Unitarian and Universalist. It is the common element. So we decide to bring flowers into the thing. What better reference for Unitarian Universalists than to acknowledge the interdependent web of all existence, to reaffirm insistence that all creation is ultimately and irrevocably dependent upon and within itself. And so we own our own flower communion. It turns out to be a meaningful and rewarding ceremony. All the people bring their individual flowers into the communion service. We place our specific individual blossoms into the larger array. And this larger array, and in a way I wish we had just one big vase like this so that all of these flowers could be in the vase together and could be this amazing bouquet, which is the bouquet reflecting the diversity of this congregation and all the people here and the children here. And each flower has its own characteristics. And you might want to think about that when you come up and maybe for the first time really look at the blossom and say, what is this? And how detailed it is, knowing that it represents someone who brought it in. And sometimes we want to look at that person and say, what an amazing creation that is. This person, so unique, so beautiful, so incredibly intricate and amazing in its creation. Just think about it. A flower is actually a miracle. How in the world did this come out of a seed? There's no way that can happen, and yet it does. And it happens in all of these amazing different ways, in all the amazing different people that are out here right now, the diversity. So we're going to ask you to bring forth yourself when we begin the music, and we've got the kids coming back in here with us so that they can be a part of us. And we want you to do it like they do in communion, where you kind of come up on the rows and maybe down the aisle, but make it one row and then come across here and look at all these flowers and briefly survey the incredible diversity, and then select one of them out, and you can take that home. And what you're doing is you're taking home a miracle. You have a pocket full of miracle that you're going to take home. And even when you get home, look at that closely and imagine, I wonder who brought this flower. I wonder what that person's doing. I wonder what that person's life is like. And I hope it's as beautiful as the flower that they brought in. And so we're going to make this kind of simple by starting with the prayer that Dr. Chapik read in the way that that first flower communion in Prague all those many years ago. And this is what he said: "In the name of providence, which implants in the seed the future of the tree, and in the hearts of men and women the longing for people living in love, in the name of the highest, in whom we move and who makes the mother and father, the brother and sister what they are, in the name of sages and great religious leaders who sacrifice their lives to hasten the coming of peace and justice, let us renew our resolution sincerely to be real sisters and brothers, regardless of any kind of bar which estranges one from another. In this holy resolution, may we be strengthened by knowing we are all one family, that one spirit of love unites us, and may we endeavor for a more perfect and joyful life. Amen." Dr. Norbert Chapik. So let's begin singing the song. It's De Caloris, and if you can just come through here and pick these up, we're going to have a good time. This is the party time of it all. So it is, but it's also should be up on the screens too. All right?
May I add one note before you choose flowers? These potted plants over here are not available. Please do not pick those. They belong to Ellen Hamilton, and she will hunt you down. And no.
Okay. Just tell the flowers.
As a rain goes England to go to Uganda. It was the British equivalent of Peace Corps. And in Uganda, I met my husband, who's American, and the end of a long story is we moved here. When we met, we were there at a time of great hope. New independence for the country, people waving the new flag, singing the new national anthem, lots of plans for the future. And in 1971, just before I left, Idi Amin led the military coup, and it was the beginning of decades of civil strife and death and poverty. And the joy and the hope that we found when we fell in love with Uganda and fell in love with each other, my husband and I, at this point, are very pleased to be with John and learn about hope for the future in Uganda. And he's visiting us to share with us what is happening in a small village in East Uganda, where he has established a school. And for those of you who are able to stay a little later, he's going to share a film and his wonderful concept and wonderful model. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you, John. John, would you stand up, please? This is Mr. John Wanda from Uganda. And shortly after, we have coffee and conversation on the patio. Will be anyone who's interested can reassemble in here and join us for a short movie that John's going to present. Thank you, John, for coming. You didn't have to bring Uganda's weather with you, though.
Let us please stand and hold hands. Life brings its freshness as an ineffable gift. Every moment renews our vision. The land bursts again into flower, and we are amazed at the world's wealth. Death is no more than permission granted to another life, so that everything may be ceaselessly renewed. The plowshare of sorrow, breaking the heart, opens up new sources of life. Without sacrifice, there is no resurrection, and all we try to save in ourselves wastes and perishes. The possible is striving to come into being. Nothing grows and blooms save by giving. All things ripen for the giving's sake, and for the giving are consummated. The possible and the future are one. All that can be, if we help, will be. Let us sing, Love Will Guide Us.